Hello all, welcome to Community Day here at the Chameleon Academy. Today I'm going to be reviewing a cage sent in by a viewer, and I think this is going to be a helpful one. The Forest Edge 5+5 is the checklist that I use to evaluate cages. And I go into detail about what goes into each one of the checklist items in the Chameleon Fundamentals video series, which I'm going to link to in the description. But just talking about it isn't the same as seeing it in action, and so today you're going to be able to see it in action. Today's cage is sent to me by a viewer who's concerned about her chameleon always wanting to get out of the cage, and when he does, he ends up falling asleep. Now, these are some red flags because chameleons shouldn't want to get out of their cage, and they shouldn't fall asleep during the day. Now, I'm not sure if they was falling asleep during the day, in their hands, or at night, but there's enough here that we need to look into it. I did get some pictures of the cage, and here is it. Now, take a look at it and see if there's some things that you would change. Keep those in mind, and as we go through the checklist, methodically one by one, you can start forming your own corrective action list. Not to send to this viewer, I'm going to take care of that, but for yourself, in practice putting together these lists for yourself, and you can apply it to your own cages. So, let's get a little bit more information as I read the information sent to me. I mist twice a day and have a mister that goes off twice a day for 15 seconds. He eats like a horse, poops like an elephant. Seems okay. Very active in the morning hours, then crawls up into the vegetation and either takes a nap or, if later in the evening, puts himself to bed. In looking at these pics, though, I can see a bald spot that needs more vegetation. I'll plug that up. My veiled doesn't behave like him, though. She is way more chill. This tank here is 24 by 24 by 24. His Florida home is 36 by 36 by 36. We are not in Florida now. Maybe the tank is too small? Anyway, thanks so much. Okay, so what we know is we have an adult male panther chameleon. We get the sense that this panther chameleon has two different homes. One in one location that is a pretty sizable 36 by 36 by 36. And the one in this location that's causing the problem is 24 by 24 by 24. And so with that information, we can start. Okay, so first thing we've got here is a hexagon glass terrarium. We know it's not an aquarium because it has a front opening door. Now, I don't see a whole lot of ventilation on that. I don't know if there is ventilation in that plastic, but the top is screen. Now, we're just gathering information at this point. We can see that the lighting is the Zoom-Ed dual dome, and one of these pictures here has that it looks like the standard heat lamp and UVB. It looks like the 13 watt, probably a 5.0 UVB lamp. And as far as hydration, it appears as though I'm having a hard time seeing exactly which mister is being used. So let's go ahead and just assume that it's a standard misting, whether it's hand sprayed or automatic. He gets misted twice a day. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll start the analysis. So the first thing we do is step back, look at the entire picture, and yes, your suspicion is correct that a cage is too small for your chameleon. I know many people will be bothered that it's not screen, and it's okay that it's glass as long as there's ventilation. I don't recognize the manufacturer, so hopefully that there's vent holes in that plastic at the bottom of the door. But regardless, it's the cage is just too small for a male panther chameleon, and it's going to be difficult for you to create a habitat inside that small of a space that's going to make your panther chameleon happy. So the first thing that's going to be on the list is get a new cage. And we'll talk about all of my recommendations at the end of the video. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to go through every aspect that's inside of this cage. And so you can apply those lessons learned to the new cage. And by learning about all of these steps, you can apply that to your other cage that you have at home, the 36 by 36 by 36, and evaluate that yourself in the same vein to see if you need to do any changes there. All right, so the first thing on our checklist is the forest edge. The forest edge is the concept that the chameleon has open area as well as a place that they can hide behind. And what this requires is foliage that the chameleon can get their body behind. Looking at this picture, I see that there's a lot of foliage, but there isn't the ability for your chameleon to use that foliage to hide behind. If your chameleon goes behind any of that foliage, and I don't even see that there's room for your chameleon to get behind the foliage, it's glass there. And so everybody can see the chameleon. He's not hiding from anybody. And to achieve the forest edge concept, what you'll need to do is put some plants in the middle of the cage. And that way he can be between the plants in the middle and the plants that are against the walls and feel like he's protected. Now, obviously we're talking about a bigger cage now, but I'm going to be talking about it as if we are fixing this particular cage. And this is educational because this particular cage actually would be a good size for a carpet chameleon. So now we get to the 5 gradients. The first of the 5 gradients is white light. And looking at this cage, I see no white light. You've got a heat lamp and you've got a UVB bulb. Now, some white light does come off of these. And as we can see in the cage, you can see in the cage. So it's not like we're in a cave here. Well, the basking bulb is meant to give off heat. The UVB bulb is meant to give off UVB. So you don't have anything that's meant to give a full spectrum lighting within the environment. And that is important because we're trying to give our chameleon the most natural experience possible. And sight is so important for them. So it's a good idea to add on a white light, and probably an LED bar would be the best for the situation when you get the larger cage. And remember, we'll talk about the equipment and everything that I'm recommending at the end of the video. The next gradient is the heat gradient. And I'd say you've actually got that taken care of with this Zoom Ed dual dome. And it looks like you've got a small watt heating bulb in there. And actually looks like the branch is a decent distance away from the heat. So I would say, at least from just looking at it, that you've got the heat gradient down. Now, I don't recognize that bulb in there. I think it looks like a standard, like a 60 watt or something. And if so, then from what I can see, it looks like it would be the right kind of power for what you've got there. So as long as you can put your hand where the back of the chameleon is and it's comfortable, or better yet, you can take a thermometer probe and just put it up there and just see what kind of temperature you've got. But I'm going to say that it looks to me like you've got an effective heat gradient. The next is the UVB gradient. Now, the UVB that you've got in there, I believe that is the Zoom Ed 13 watt 5.0 compact fluorescent light. Assuming I'm correct, the effective range for that particular bulb is a whopping 1 inch. That's about 2 inches from the top of the cage. And so anything beyond 3 inches is almost useless. Now, we don't know at what point UVB becomes absolutely useless, but we're looking for a UV index of 3, and that's about 3 inches in front of the bulb. And as we can see here, there's no way for your chameleon to get 3 inches away from the bulb unless he hangs from the top. So the UVB gradient, not given in this cage, and so we're going to have to fix that in the final cage. Our fourth gradient is hydration. Now, I'm not seeing where the mist nozzles are. Let's just assume they're there, and if you hand mist, you get the water on the leaves. And so you are taking care of the hydration there. I don't know that 2 times a day, 15 seconds 2 times a day is going to be enough for him, but you will know that by looking at his poop. If he is a great drinker from what you missed and his poops are moist, then okay. Looking at him, he doesn't appear to be dehydrated. And in fact, he appears to be pretty healthy. So I think whatever you're doing is working. They get moisture from the spray, what they breathe in, and from food. And so if he's a great eater, he's getting moisture that way as well as your spray. And the final gradient is that security gradient or exposure, privacy. And that's where we want to make sure he's able to hide as well as be out in the open. And as I said before, I don't see any place in this cage where he can hide. Now, panther chameleons are very gregarious, and often they don't use any hiding place in their cage, so it looks like it's sitting there useless. But just having it, him knowing that it's there, he knows that he could go to a safe place in case something like a dog, a hawk, or something flew overhead. Remember, he's still got his wild DNA. As much as he is comfortable with you, there is something very deep inside, the survival instinct that is still alive and well in every chameleon. And we need to make sure that we cater to that survival instinct as well as enjoy the parts where he's tamed down. So those are the 5 gradients. Let's do a check for the branches. And for our 5 branches, first of all, we have the heat basking branch. And as I said, it looks like you've got that taken care of. So check mark on that one. Second is UVB basking branch. And as we said before, there isn't an appropriate branch that puts him in an effective UVB level. The solution is actually not to put a branch so his back is like 2 inches away from the bulb. The solution is just to get a better UVB bulb. And we'll talk about that. Because like this particular lamp setup will just not be able to be effective in the appropriate cage size for this panther. Now, if you said to me, but Bill, he has been under this lamp for all his life and he is showing no signs of MBD, so it should be just fine. I would then ask you how much dietary D3 is in this supplementation, because that may be how he's getting his vitamin D3, which gives him his calcium. So there are ways to account for low to no UVB. I mean, chameleon keepers, before we had UVB bulbs, used to give just dietary D3, and so it can work. The problem is that dietary D3 is not regulated, and their body cannot stop absorbing D3, which is a fat-soluble vitamin, if it comes in through the diet. If they synthesize vitamin D3 for exposure to the sun, or the UVB bulb, then their body naturally shuts off the production once they have enough. And since there is such thing as vitamin D toxicity when there's too much in the body, that's something that we want to avoid. And so I don't like to consider vitamin D3 intake as a substitute for UVB exposure. It's one of those things that can work if you know how to do it, but it's just better to do it right. And UVB is the right way to do it. Okay, next is our sleeping branch. And this is a branch that's specifically placed so the chameleon can sleep in an area, as in behind a bunch of foliage. And this is very closely related to the security gradient. And once again, there's just no place in here where he can feel safe if, for whatever reason, something happens that he's not sure about. Okay, next is the eating branch. And I see a food cup there, and there are ample opportunities for him to zap things out of that food cup. And so I think you got the food cup taken care of, and the eating branch is done. Check on that. And finally, we have the drinking branch, which is, can he actually drink? And it looks to me like you have it set up to where he could get a hold of water on the leaves, and so I think you've got that pretty well taken care of. That kind of thing is obviously not as big of a deal in smaller cages because there just isn't enough room to not be in contact with water. But when you go up to a larger cage, you're going to want to keep this checklist in mind because everything is going to expand to fit into that larger cage. All right, so let's go ahead and go over the things that I would recommend you changing in this situation. First of all, it sounds like you're in a traveling situation where he's in one cage for part of the year and another cage for the other part of the year. The best way to do that is to have 2 fully set up cages so he's fully taken care of in both places. Now, obviously, I'm making a lot of assumptions here, so forgive me if I've made the wrong assumption in the situation. For an adult panther chameleon, the minimum cage size is 2 by 2 by 4 foot tall. Now the 36 by 36 by 36, those are good dimensions and those are workable. And of course, it all depends on how it's set up. I am not aware of any chameleon cages that are 36 by 36 floor print. And so it sounds like this is a specialty glass terrarium, bird cage, or ferret cage, or something like that. Maybe an iguana cage. So I don't know what the actual situation is, but what you're looking for is enough space that you can create microclimates and gradients for your panther chameleon. And for that, here's some pictures of what a 2 by 2 by 4 foot effective cage looks like. And you can see where it has an open area on top, it has a dense foliage area in the middle, and even though he doesn't spend a whole lot of time at the bottom, you have a whole lot of area to create gradients, and that's the progression from one value to another. In a small cage like a 2x2x2 like this hex that you have here, it's very difficult to create much of a gradient from the top to the bottom. So let's go ahead and assume that you're going to get a 2x2x4 foot tall cage. If you want to go bigger, I'm all for that. That's wonderful. I'd love everybody to go bigger. But we've proven that the 2x2x4 does work. And it fits nicely into most people's houses and is accessible. For white light, I would recommend getting an LED bar. And for UVB, getting a T5 fluorescent UVB bulb within its own fixture. There are many ways that you can do the hydration. If you go onto ChameleonAcademy.com, you're going to be seeing my preferred way, which is a combination of misting and fogging. Now, you'll also need to figure out a drainage solution. I'm sure you've noticed in your cage here that there's no drainage, and so whatever water you put in eventually ends up at the bottom. And either you have to sop it up or else it naturally evaporates and gets kind of messy down there. So you definitely want to consider your drainage solution. Inside the cage, you're going to want to create a middle layer that's thick with foliage that your chameleon can get in and hide behind. Once again, looking at these pictures, you can see how the chameleon can hide within all of this foliage. Now, as far as the heat, you can keep the heat lamp that you've got right now. I like the 60 watts, and it looks like you've got somewhere around that size. But whatever it is, you can change out bulbs that will fit that fixture. And although the UVB bulb that's in that fixture isn't very useful, it doesn't mean you can't use the fixture. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about if I were to put together a shopping list for you. Now, for the cage, my recommendation would be to do a Dragon Strand tall hybrid cage. And what this is, it's a 2x2x4 foot tall cage, and it's got solid walls so you can keep in the humidity as well as it protects the rest of your house from mist overspray. Now, the Dragon Strand, by the way, Dragon Strand is my company, and the reason why I'm recommending these cages is not only it's my company, but I designed it to be fully featured. It's the only cage that's going to have all of these features, and that's not a coincidence. It's because I'm a chameleon person. So it will give you that the protection and the mist retention. It has two mounts for misting nozzles. It has a fogger input, and by the way, everybody, that's new, starting actually today. If you buy a Dragon Strand tall hybrid, you are going to be getting a mist input there. That's the one thing that cages need to have, and so I said, well, I got to put it on my cages. In the Dragon Strands, you standard get the dragon ledges that are brackets that go on the sides and the back, and so you can tie branches and get pots, and you can put them up where the chameleon needs them. There's the drainage tray, and so you don't have to worry about where all that water is going, and it is going to go through the floor. The floor can be a solid floor or a screen floor. Either way, the water goes outside of the cage into the drainage tray, so it's kept apart from any escaped feeder insects and the poop, which is unhygienic. And so that is the easiest way if you're going to buy a bundled cage that has everything you need. You can go for a cheaper cage like the Reptibreeze. I have lots of videos on how to take the cheap screen Reptibreeze and MacGyver it and add on solid walls. You can add on dragon ledges. Dragon Strand does have the kit that you can put onto the Reptibreeze as well as a drainage tray. And since the Reptibreeze is so cheap and accessible, you'll find a lot of videos that I have about what you can do to the cage. And so, the Zoom Ed Reptibreeze is the cage we chameleon people love to hack, and we can do all sorts of things with it. But if you just want something out of the box, assemble it, and it's got everything you need, then go with the Dragon Strand. For the heat lamp, my favorite thing is the deep dome, which means that the basking bulb is a couple of inches from the top of the cage. And what you have here, this dual dome, actually is a deep dome, and it does keep the light above the top of the cage. And so that's why I say you can just keep using this if you want. If you want to get something more dedicated, then ZoomEd has a deep dome fixture, which I'll show here. And this is my favorite one to use. For white light, there's a number of LED bars that really light up the cage. My favorite is this high output system from Thrive Ecosystems, and I'll put a link to that down in the description. My favorite UVB is the ProT5 6% from Arcadia. Now, Arcadia does have the Jungle Dawn LED bars, and so if you want to get one of those, it can hook up to your UVB light, and you can get them both from the same place. And so that LED bar does work. The problem I run into when I start putting together these lists is either I do the list for convenience and cost, or I do the list for effectiveness. And everybody, I'm telling you right now, I have struggled with balancing those two for so long. And I've made a decision that going forward, I'm not going to make lists based on convenience or cost. Obviously, I'm not going to make it horribly expensive, but I'm just going to have one list that has the best. And this is the best combination of cost and features. And I'm just going to work with one list, and that's a list that I'm going to use every time I do a cage evaluation. And lighting wise, that means the Thrive Ecosystems LED bar and the Arcadia ProT5 6%. And of course, 24 inches. For hydration, I recommend a combination of misting and fogging. The mister I love to use is the MistKing. It is definitely one of the most expensive misters on the market, but it's not astronomical. And the problem is there really isn't a close option. There's so many omissions in the other options that I just got to stick with the MistKing. Now, Climist is essentially a copy of MistKing, and so that works as well. But for all of you out there who have other type of cages, just remember that the Climist, the threads on the mister, it's like it only goes halfway. And so you're not going to be able to use the Climist mister on thicker cages. If you put the mist head up and you say, wait a minute, this nut isn't attaching, well, that's because you got a Climist mist head and not a MistKing. MistKing threads go all the way up. So just a little aside for those of you who have been doing this for a while. Now, I do recommend fogging. That has been an incredible hydration source for me. Unfortunately, we really don't have that great of foggers in the market. It's a new technology, and so companies are just starting to figure it out. Right now, our options are a lot of cheap offshore foggers, or else you make your own. Now, I've got lots of videos on making your own from parts from the House of Hydro, and go to the DIY Chameleon guys and you see an entire episode on how to make your own fogger. But if you want to buy a fogger, there are some that are adequate, and I'm going to link to the one that I have used a lot in the description. It's a simple fogger, it's not expensive, and it does the job. And so let's do a summary. Get a bigger cage and have the cage size in both locations that your chameleon's going to live. Heat is a little bit easier because you can feel it, you can measure it. UVB is a little bit more challenging because you need a solar meter, or else you estimate it and put the branch so your chameleon's back is 6 inches away from the Arcadia 6% bulb. The ZoomEd 5.0 is an equivalent, but it's the Arcadia that comes with a very nice fixture, a high quality fixture, and the ProT5 is the bundle of the fixture and the bulb, and that's what I recommend doing. And then for hydration, it's up to you how you want to handle that. You can do what you're doing right now and transfer it to the larger cage, or else you can get a MistKing. And as far as cages, I recommend the Dragon Strand Tall Hybrid Cage, or if you want to MacGyver it a bit, the ReptiBreeze will give you the 2x2 by 4 foot space. You just need to figure out the drainage, how you're going to mount the branches, and make sure you get the misting and the fogging mounts from MistKing or other locations. All right, everybody, there is our analysis. Obviously, I hope that the keepers of this chameleon were able to get some information from here that's going to be useful for them, but also for the rest of you. I hope you took this as an opportunity to practice the Forest Edge 5+5. And when we do another one of these, you can practice it again and again and again until it becomes second nature. And that's what I'm looking for here. All of you who are following the Chameleon Academy, I want you to absorb all of this information until it's second nature. And you can just look at a chameleon cage, go through all of the checklists in your head, and you feel comfortable that you've created a good chameleon cage, or that you can help somebody make their cage better. But as always, please, if you're going to be helping somebody, please be kind. We all started at some point. Some of us started with better information than others. And you know how it is when you get information that takes you off in the wrong direction, even if it's done in the best of intentions. And so if you've watched this Chameleon Academy and you've internalized all of this and you're going to help someone, make sure they feel good about what they've done. Yes, you have to tell them like it is, but you don't have to make them feel bad about it. They tried. Recognize that, celebrate that, and they want to grow. And that's what this is all about, is all of us growing. We're all at different stages in our chameleon development. I'm helping you, and I am being helped by the people who are further along than I am. And that's the way a community works. And with that, I want to say thank you very much for being part of this community, and thank you for making it a place that people want to be. All you got to do is be on one of our live sessions, and you can tell that we've got a special community here. I don't take it for granted, and none of you should either. We've got something special. And with that, I'm going to send you on your way. Have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow for the DIY Chameleon guys. Take care of yourself, be excellent to each other, and I'll see you next time.